Right. Welcome everybody back to the Smash Controllers podcast. Today I'm here with JC from Askanenemy Studios. Give it up for
Yes,
JC,
sir.
everybody. Woo!
Hell yeah, man.
Hey, what's up, Jay?
What's going on, my man? How you
Hey,
doing?
I'm all right. How are you doing today? So,
Fantastic, dude. Can't complain.
all
It's always
right.
fun doing stuff like this. I
Oh
appreciate you
man.
inviting me on, my man.
Oh, no problem. I'm glad you wanted to come on, man. Uh, I was like I said, like I said for the other people, I didn't have a chance to really talk to you at DreamHack
Right?
because they were closed. They were kicking everybody out, and I was like, but if you got a card, you got a
Yeah, man.
card, I will come back. I got some brewing. I
Hey,
got
man,
some
that's
brewing.
cool. Yeah, I love when people start up stuff like this because this is like, it's fun, it's entertaining, and it's just communicating with people is always good, man.
hmm
Yeah.
So before we get started,
Sure.
where are you from?
El Paso, Texas.
El
So I've
Paso,
lived here
Texas.
pretty much, yeah, lived here pretty much all my life, man. This is where I'm from. I got it tattooed. Might have showed you my tattoo when you were at the show. I don't remember.
I don't think I had enough time to talk to you.
Yeah.
I was literally
Yeah,
like
I
running,
forgot about
like
that because they closed this show floor earlier than I think most other conventions do so, and that kind of threw me off too.
yeah, same. I was like, cause I had finally found my friend that invited me, and I was like, okay, let me go, um, let me go talk to some of these people over here, at the I guess it was the creator. I don't know the
Yeah,
exact
it's like
name.
a little indie bubble, like because I was actually going to ask you, man. The crazy part is, I think you mentioned this was like your first con. That section was just like indie games, right? But it was like
Yeah.
a relatively small section when you have like Call of Duty and like because DreamHack is more like esports oriented.
Yeah.
So like I was wondering what got you to show up to that little area. Was it just you just walked by? Did your buddy let you know about it?
No, actually it was me.
Oh shit.
Yeah, no, I wanted to do a podcast.
Okay.
And I knew it wanted to be kind of like gaming centric, but it kind of tackle other things as well, but mostly gaming.
Sure.
And he was like, "Hey, I got an extra pass to get in the Dream Hack. Would you want to go?" I was like, "Yes, yes, I would."
That's how it works.
And
Yeah.
I got there, and I have bad social anxiety, so
Ah,
I'm by myself. I don't know
sure.
where any. He's not answering the phone because he's over there playing Tekken. I'm like, where is everybody? Where are
Yeah.
you? So I'm
Yeah,
just kind
yeah.
of walking around. Oh, hey, cosplay, and I know from a previous con because this is my second one. From previous con, they have like people selling stuff on like the other side of the con, so it
Sure.
just memory was like, okay, they're probably over there selling stuff. So I, kind of walked around, got a view, and I was like, let me go network. Let me go try my hand at networking.
Fucking A, man.
I'm not
Yeah.
very good at it, or at least I don't think so. So where's this tablet? It keeps beeping, and it's. I'm sorry.
It's all good, man.
I was working on it, trying to figure something out, but I was like, let me go network. It just kind of put the idea out there, give myself, I don't want to say pressure, but like, I got to deliver now because I've put it out there to people. Like, hey, I'm starting
Sure.
this and I like to, get you on board. And so I talked to about four people, and they were like, all right, Artist Alley's closing. Get your stuff and get out. And I was like, oh, hey, I got to go. And I just started running to every table. You got a card? Kind of give you a spiel. Hey, I'm starting a podcast for gamers, blah, blah, blah. You got a card?
Awesome.
I get back to you. And that's kind of how I caught you. And you was like, awesome. You want a shirt? And I was like, I'm not going to say
100%,
no.
man.
I'm not going to say no. And so here we are.
No, and that, dude, fucking A, man. Yeah, and that's awesome because like, so like with the social anxiety thing, I don't know how bad it is in your case, but like it really is good to like do things like this to kind of get you out of that comfort zone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And honestly, like it's funny you mentioned that a buddy of yours gave you a ticket to one of these cons because when I got started, when I got my start, like in the industry, if you could say that, a buddy of mine got me a ticket to E3.
Oh.
And at that time, I was just barely starting to like learn how to make video games because I know I didn't get to tell you much of the story when we were on the show floor because, you know, obviously time or whatever. But when I started making video games, I dropped out of game design school because it was a complete waste of time. And like for me, I didn't learn a damn thing about making games at school. So I dropped out and taught myself how to do all this stuff by just watching YouTube tutorials or whatever. But at the time when my buddy got me a ticket to E3, Sony was just starting their like indie initiative. So they were trying to get like, you know, games on PlayStation Vita and stuff like that. And that night I met my future account manager. I didn't know this at the time. I just happened to go to the pool at the Fig, which is where I knew a lot of these gaming journalists and stuff would hang out. So I did exactly what you did too. Is I kind of like put myself in that position that I normally would not have, you know? Because being a musician, I am kind of more like social with people for the most part. But for the most part, you know, I think it's a natural thing of just people. They do lock themselves away a little, so they try not to get out of a comfort zone. And that's one thing I've learned over time of doing this for so long is it's the idea of getting out of your comfort zone, which leads into the game. You know, like a dual hand disaster tracker is a risk 'em up for a reason. Like it's the idea of getting you out of this comfort zone of playing these kind of twin stick shooters that are very comfortable and very obvious. And even though you've got like your Ikarugas and stuff like that, you know, like your bullet hells and all that kind of stuff, like a dual hand disaster is still like a completely different beast.
Could you explain what that is for people that may not know what that is?
Absolutely, man. So a dual hand disaster tracker is a split screen, single player, twin stick risk 'em up. What you're doing is you're controlling two ships at the same time, but they are on independent screens. So the easiest, like the elevator pitch for the game, the idea is imagine playing Galaga and Pac-Man and playing them at the same time. You know what I mean? So on the left side, you're killing enemies, you earn points. That's how you get your score up. On the right-hand side, you're recovering resources that help you multiply those points. So even though there's two separate sides, they're both doing something that relates to the other side.
Gotcha.
And doing both of those things at the same time is kind of the trick of the game. But the other twist, like the main twist, is that it's a risk 'em up because the only way to keep your score is to decide when to stop playing. So basically it's called extract. So you have to get to a point where you have a score as high as you want it to be, and then it's kind of like, okay, well, do I stay in and risk losing that score, or do I keep pushing my luck and try to get the higher score on the leaderboard, right? So that's kind of like the main gist of the game. The devil's in the details when you play it, obviously, but yeah.
Okay. All right. What when you came up with this, were you just like, I want to put some pressure on people? Like what brought this about? Like why this style of game? Why play like this?
Sure. So actually the funny part is the cool thing is your podcast is called Smash Controllers, and it totally goes with the game, right? Because it's like it can lead someone to smash the fuck out of a controller for sure. So when I came up with the idea, it was basically like, again, I didn't know how to make video games, right? So what I did is I sat in front of my computer when I started to like kind of start to design it, and I just held a controller and I just started thinking of things that I could do and like what would be fun to do, right? And then suddenly, for whatever reason, a game called Brothers came back to me because it's one of my favorite games. Have you ever played
I just played it recently, yes.
Awesome. Yeah, so in Brothers, you're obviously controlling two brothers, right? They're on the same screen, though, and that's kind of where the twist came for me. Because in Brothers, you're controlling two brothers, one with each stick. Your real only input is, if I remember correctly, is the triggers. Yeah. Because it's the left side's this brother, right side's this brother, and the button is like action or interact, right? And so what happens, though, in Brothers is when those guys kind of cross the center of the screen, you lose focus on who you're controlling in some of those puzzles. Granted, the puzzles aren't that complicated, so it's not like, you know, Twitch reaction or anything you need to do. But it does get frustrating when you're like, oh, fuck, I want this guy to go this way or whatever, right? So with ADHD, what I decided to do is just split the screen in half and give you two distinct things to do. But like Brothers, they still relate to each other. So just because you have two different things to do doesn't mean you need to separate them necessarily, right? And that stuff came like over time, like the details of like getting on a resource to help multiply these points, or letting enemies through will come over to this side. All that stuff just came after iteration of the game. Because like I started the game in 2013, I think. So I've been working on it when I met you, like at DreamHack. I had been working on it for like 10 years, man. Like it was, yeah, it was a long time coming. And that day was the day I announced that I left early access or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
You had a teenager at that point, just about.
Yeah. Well, fuck, man. Yeah. Let's keep it at that. Sure.
Okay.
No, I'm just messing, dude. I don't care. I'm 44, dude. I'm 44 years old. It's all good.
I messed up my own show. I meant to ask you this before we got started.
Sure.
What was your first like video game, and what was the first video game to make you rage? I'm all off. I'm sorry.
Oh man. No, it's all good. Dude, honestly, there's fucking so many of them. But I mean, my favorite game. Okay, so this is actually a perfect example. My favorite game is Metal Gear Solid, and so at a certain point, Metal Gear gets a lot of bad rap for like the way the game controls, right? Like over time, obviously over time the game gets better. Then you have Phantom Pain, which is like the more modern more modern realized game of that style, right? Or even just of the Metal Gear games, because there's a lot of games that are stealth that are still, I think, might be done better. But anyway, so that was my favorite game, and at that point, at that time, I could easily go back to that one and be like, oh man, there's a lot of moments that you want to smash your controller in that particular game.
Yeah.
But if you want to talk about rage, man,
yes.
There's no game that makes me more mad than Death Stranding.
Ooh,
and
okay.
Holy crap, I could go on that for hours, but
I'm noticing a pattern here with this. Those Kojima games.
Dude, yes, but the thing about that though is, this is like, oddly enough, I think Death Stranding was the game where I finally broke on the Kojima can do anything and it's okay. You know what I mean? Because it's like, holy crap, dude, Death Stranding is just like, I hate that game, but there's something about it that keeps me going back. And I hate to say it, but I've bought it like, I've almost done the thing of buying it like 3 times on 3 different consoles. I didn't go that far because I'm like, I'm not going to play this thing that many times. It's just too slow paced.
I got you.
Where like, a Call of Duty you can buy on multiple consoles and it's always the same game.
Right.
Granted, nowadays you kind of don't have to because of the cross-platform thing. I know I'm kind of going all over the place too, man.
No,
so let me know.
It's all right. No. This is your episode.
Awesome, man. Yeah, let me know if I do ramble too much, because I am.
It's okay. This is your episode. What you want to say? This is your episode.
Awesome, man. But yeah, so to keep it super short, is Death Stranding is the one I can think of immediately that makes me think that.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, maybe not for the reasons that most people would find, rage-inducing type games, but yeah,
that's all right. So like, okay, so to get myself back on task.
Sure.
Was this your first game like that you created, or was this like okay? So
yeah,
how long was it in like an idea before you were like, all right, I'm about to start. I'm going to do this. And was it always going to be this style of game?
Yes. Well, so one thing I talk to people about when they tell me that they want to make video games, right, is scope. Like knowing how big to make a game, depending on how big your team is or how good your skills are and stuff like that, right? So when I started the game, I started the game in Game Maker. And that was also because at the time, Game Maker was the more accessible engine to get into to make video games as opposed to like Unity or Unreal at the time.
Okay.
And so in Game Maker, the idea was to make just a straight up 2D twin stick shooter because that's what I loved. Those are the type of games I loved. And something with familiarity so that you can start with a base and then modify it, right? That's what I always recommend people who have no idea how to make games or whatever, is to start with something they're familiar with. Not like a Call of Duty, though, because, that's kind of ridiculous. Although if you have the energy and whatever to do that, maybe even the skill, then more power to you. But Yeah, if you can start with something simple like even just Pong and know that what the rules are, right? So that you can break them. Because then if you have Pong and you just have your two paddles and the ball, now you're like, okay, well, how can I modify this? Well, let's make the paddles rockets, you know,
Okay.
and like, you know, whatever. You can start breaking the rules once you know what the rules are. If you start with something and you don't have any rules, you're gonna. It's like some people will freak out at like a blank piece of paper, right?
Right.
For that same reason, because it's like I have no rules. Like, where do I start? So you give yourself a base and then go with it. And that's kind of when I started the game. It was in Game Maker for that reason, for the simplicity of it. But Sony didn't support Game Maker at the time, so I had to move over to Unity. That's a whole other story. But yeah, it was always supposed to be a simple kind of twin stick shooter that I could pull off because of my limited skills, right? Like I didn't know 3D modeling or anything like that,
Gotcha.
so getting into animations would have sucked. My art style wasn't that great, so even the art in the game was like just 2D pixels that I eventually used a program called Cubicle, which is a voxel 3D modeling program, to make the pixel art into 3D models. So that's kind
Okay.
of how the game became 3D. It wasn't necessarily I had that idea from the beginning. It just kind of went that way
All right, that makes
naturally. Yeah.
that makes sense. Okay. So, you self-taught or did you go to school for? Oh, self-taught. So,
Self-taught, yeah.
okay.
The
So,
only thing I learned at school was how to waste time going to school.
how to get in debt?
Yeah, how to get in depth for sure, man.
Yeah.
There is not a single thing I can think of at game design school that I've brought into me making games.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you done everything by yourself, like music, design, everything.
Yeah.
How did you? What did you want the game to sound like? Like when you go for music, is it like I wanted to sound like 8-bit, or do I want it to have kind of like a, I don't know what the music sounds like, but like
Sure.
maybe like a rock and roll, or something like when you're doing your game, like is like music like something at the forefront of your mind, like I want it to sound like this.
Sure. To a certain extent. So the funny part is, it's crazy you asked that because I am a musician first and foremost. So yeah, the music for me kind of came naturally, and it wasn't like I really thought about, I want the game to sound like this. The funny part about the transition from when I was a musician into making video games is that I guess by that point, and I hate to say this, but it's kind of like maybe I was burnt out on the music part of it, where I didn't think too much of it, right? Because, for example, when I told some friends that I was going to make video games, they kind of immediately thought, oh, he's going to make like a Guitar Hero or a Rock Band because of the music
Yeah.
thing, right? But for me, it was more about just like the music is being written to give it something as a soundtrack. Now that I think about it more, I really wish I could have gone back and added more music to the game to give it more like to allow like for different tracks, right? Like,
Gotcha.
so if someone's playing a level, they can just press a button and it'll go to the next track. Like that would have been my natural progression if I kept adding stuff to the game. Would be to add more music to the game. But I didn't approach it as I want the game to sound like this. Outside of the idea of just wanting the game to sound good, right? Like
That makes sense.
making explosions sound good. So like all that stuff was really fun to do because it was a lot of like sound design, which is always kind of it's always kind of like layering audio and for example, the sound of this scatter shot in particular is like 4 or 5 different sounds of like a silenced pistol and then just like an explosion, but then a muffled balloon popping. Like it's a lot of different sounds to try and get that like scatter shot sound, you know?
Got you. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. Somebody said you can always add it later as an update. It would be cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, so man, again, I know I could go off on so many different things, but when it comes to updates, if anyone out there is trying to make a video game, you know, like for example, I'm able to release the game on Switch, Xbox, and PlayStation and Steam, right? Anybody can release a game on Steam. It's very easy. You just pay your $100 fee, I think it is, and then you can make a game. That's why there's no lack of video games on Steam, right? Or even Epic Game Store for the most part, but obviously Steam's the bigger one. But when it comes to consoles like Xbox and all that stuff, certification kind of gets in the way of, especially if you're like a one-man game dev, it gets in the way of you releasing updates very frequently, because certification is just a pain in the ass. Certification is like where they test your game and they find stuff wrong with it, or they do this. And, you know, like, for example, one of the reasons, the patch that I've been waiting to release here on the Switch for the game has been held up is I got failed on someone plugging a headphone into the Switch and putting the volume all the way down and then still hearing like the menu selection. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And then so I go and I test it based on their report, and it's the rumble of the controller that is making the sound, not the sound itself. So like because of that, now you have to let them know, and that delays it like another 1 or 2 days depending on how long it gets, you know. Stuff like that, dude. Okay. Like when you hear the story of like the idea of like how games ever even get finished, that's why. Is because of stuff like that.
Yeah.
So imagine you're like, you know, your really big games like Skyrim and stuff, dude. Like having to just quality assurance, like QA those games is probably a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
It's insane. Yeah. Let alone if you're doing something on your own.
Yeah, I was just about to say, especially as a one-man team, like that'd be like, you know what, I'm done for today.
Yeah. Hey man, sometimes that totally happens. Yeah, you're just like, you know what, I'm done. Yeah. And I just walk away, and I'll come back and be like,
Well, you kind of touched on it a little bit. My next question,
sure.
I know, like you said, it's for Steam, but you say you have it out everywhere else. How difficult was that to get it everywhere else outside of Steam? Because I know some other guys said, you know, that they had issues, or, you know, they're not at the point where they can do that. But you said you do, so I just...
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so basically, it was difficult. It's obviously difficult on the engineering side, right? Like on the making the game. Oh yeah, it's a lot of trial and error feedback from the community. Yeah, so I mean, the community part is actually a cool part, because that's something you get over time, right? You go show your game at events like PAX or whatever. And I've shown my game over the years at like more than 40 events. So the feedback I got from those events has definitely helped me make the game better, because I got to see firsthand like what people had trouble with, like what people liked about the game, and points and making points and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, yeah, so actually that kind of goes into the idea of making games for like Switch or whatever. The engineering part is obviously super hard. And I could get into that, but the difficult part of getting your foot in the door first is probably the hardest part.
Okay.
And luckily, like I told you at the start, when I got started, you know, Sony was just starting their like indie initiative thing. So yeah, they were kind of like looking for just about anybody. I mean, at that point, like all I had was the game on Game Maker that I was working on, and I explained it to the guy who, like I said, would soon become my account manager at Sony. It was at a point where I could just describe the game to him and give him an idea, and then that got my foot in the door, right?
Okay.
But my foot in the door wouldn't have happened had it not been for my buddy who invited me to E3, who let me get my foot in the door, right?
Right.
So it's kind of like how you mentioned, it's the idea of just getting yourself out there.
Right.
Granted, nowadays it's a lot more like you could be a lot more digital about it. So obviously, all of the major platforms, Sony, PlayStation, Microsoft, and Nintendo, all have their forums online where you could go log in and just kind of like submit your stuff. At that point, you know, it's all about your team or you, and you know, just having something that you can show, and yeah, like just applying for it more than anything. Like all these people say, well, I don't want to apply till the game's kind of ready. When is the game ready? Right. Like apply whenever you can, apply as much as you can. And yeah, like if you can, I would strongly recommend making it to like, GDC and stuff, like GDC specifically, because that's where a lot of the big platform people are.
What's GDC? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no, not at all, man. It's the Game Developers Conference, so it's more focused on game developers. Even though they do, announce technology, new announcements and stuff like that. It's more like an industry event where like PAX and DreamHack are more for the community, right? For like end users, for people who play video games. GDC is more for people who make games.
Gotcha.
So those are the places where you would meet, your representatives from like Microsoft and Sony and everything, so that you can, maybe face to face is always a lot better than it is just kind of filling out a form online and sending it.
Definitely.
But yeah, if you do that and you meet someone at an event, and usually it's a lot of these after parties and stuff where like, people are a little more loose and like willing to talk about stuff. You can go up to them and just be like, hey man, I've got this problem or this project for whatever, and this is what it is. This is what it does. If you have something you can even show them. Now with the Steam Deck, like I think that is the perfect device to have a project on, as opposed to like before where you would show videos of it. Like you can actually have a project on a Steam Deck or something, right? And you could show it to somebody and have them interact with it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and don't be afraid of showing it too early, because no one's gonna steal your idea and finish it the way you intend to finish it anyway.
Right.
That's an idea that makes it's common sense, but I think like Ken Levine brought it up as a thing. The guy who made BioShock, he brought up the idea of, if you start something, don't be afraid to tell someone about it necessarily, because the end product is you guys are going to go in like different directions.
Right.
You're never going to go in the same direction. So don't be afraid of doing that kind of stuff for sure.
So do you go to a lot of events, like, kind of showing off your game or meeting people and putting it out there? Like how often would you say you travel to different events?
Well, since 2020, I've not traveled until DreamHack.
Okay.
But before that, from 2016 to 2020, it was like nonstop, dude. I went to like PAX East, West, Minecon, TwitchCon, pretty much everything in between. Like if you go to my website, AskanEnemyStudios.com, there's a section there where you can see all the events that I've gone to. And that was that was thanks to a very, very close friend who helped me a lot on those trips. So obviously it's not like everybody can just travel as much as they wish they could. Even right now, as much as I'd like to, I'm not in the position to, but at the same time, I don't have anything new necessarily to show. I've been showing the same game for like 6 years at least on like that circuit. Right?
Yeah, I got you.
And one of the main reasons I did DreamHack was primarily because the game was done, the game was coming out, and I was lucky to get a slot on DreamHack thanks to like the IGDA and stuff like that.
Okay.
And a lot of the developers that showed their games at DreamHack were lucky enough to get their booth paid for and stuff. So all you kind of had to pay for was like hotel and stuff.
Yeah.
And those type of situations, if you can nail that, if you can, land something like that.
Yeah.
Take advantage of it as much as you can, because obviously it led to like a situation like this, right? Where I met you and, we could be talking about it like this.
Oh,
so yeah, for sure.
Is, when you optimize your game, is it different, like platform to platform? Like how you would have to do it on Steam versus how you would have to do it on PlayStation or Nintendo? Is there like different?
Yes and no. Yes, because so Unity, the game now anyway is built in Unity. So Unity does handle a lot of the technical things, right? Like Unity's not magic, but it definitely like does a lot of good stuff for you. But when it comes to each individual platform, a good example is like the individual features, right? So like, for example, on the Switch, you don't just have Rumble, you have HD Rumble. And that's kind of like Unity helps you write the code for all of the platforms, but there are times where you, and this is kind of getting into like programming type stuff, but you kind of have to wrap certain code so that it only executes on a certain device. I was going to say it's a lot simpler than it sounds, but it's kind of also still kind of difficult. But it basically is, in that, like, if you want to take advantage of a specific feature for the Nintendo Switch, then you have to wrap it with code that says, I want this code to only happen on this platform.
Okay.
When it comes to optimizing, though, that's a little different, because then it is like Unity still has some tricks for you to use, but for example, the Switch is not as powerful as the Xbox Series X, right? So when it comes to stuff like that, if you have a game with a lot of really big textures, like a lot of detail, then, I mean, you've probably seen it where you have your games like your Witchers that run like on high-end PCs, and then all of a sudden, holy shit, they got it on this Switch. Like how did that happen?
Yeah.
But you put them side by side and you see, oh shit, that's why.
Yeah.
Because like the graphics are super low quality. It's lowering down the textures of everything that's being rendered. For a game like mine, I think it mostly suffers from my inability to write really good code. So it's kind of like you kind of do have to know how to write code that is efficient, so that you're not overtaxing either the GPU or the CPU on the Switch, right?
Gotcha.
Yeah. So those are things you want to look out for. It's just depending on how intensive your game is, whether it's graphics or not. Like, those are things you want to look for, is just how efficient can you make your code. Yeah. With people using AI as code, Unity separates code bases and exit. Yeah, basically. Unity has like, again, Unity is magic, because it does, like, you just tell it, I want to make an Xbox build, and then it just fucking spits out the Xbox build. But that's kind of the thing, is you can do that, but then when you put it on the Xbox, that's when you start to realize, okay, well, the game crashes because this isn't run correctly on this platform or whatever, right? So there is optimization. You have to do that, and to do that, you need dev kits, so that you can run the game on that device.
Gotcha.
And then you could connect it to Unity and also see, like, oh shit, the game's taking up this much memory on a Switch as opposed to on Steam. Because on PC, you can get away with a lot. Like, there's a lot of overhead that a PC will help you cover. It kind of helps you cover your tracks. But until you run your game on a lower end device, you won't know, like, why it's melting.
Okay.
Until you do. Yeah. I mean, dude, even like we were talking about our buddy Joe, right? Who worked on Snakes with Fists. Like, his game, as simple, even though I don't think it's simple, but it's just the art style, right? Most people at face value would be like, oh, this game can run on anything. And not to say he doesn't have skills, because I'm sure he does, but the idea is that if you were to even run that game on like a Switch and it ran badly, more than likely it would be because his textures were too big for the Switch to really render. So, stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So you really gotta essentially get in there and know what you're doing for the most part.
100%. Yeah. It's scary, dude, but it is definitely, like, if you have the desire to want to follow through on it, it goes back to, like I said, it's crazy that games even get finished because, like, certification and stuff like that. But you'll find a solution, man. You might end up with no hair at the end of the week, but you'll find a solution if you stay dedicated.
Yeah, because I can't remember who it was. He said when he got a spot at DreamHack, he was like, I finished the game that night, that week, that day. It was like that day or that week or something. Like, I had 3 days to get it done, and he was like, I stayed up all night and day to get it done. I was like, hey,
it might have been Joe. You. I mean,
I think it was Joe.
Developers are always.
Yeah.
A lot of developers are that way. Like, when I was still working on the game, like actually working on the game, and I would go out to PAX, I would actually take the build, see if anyone reacted to something that I added or whatever, go back to my hotel room when the show was over, fix it or add stuff to it, and then go back and take that build. That's super dangerous to do. Because you don't know what you're breaking by fixing something,
right?
Or you don't know what you're breaking by adding something new. So that's super. I wouldn't recommend it unless you're dumb like me. But Joe did it too. Like, I know he did because he told me he did. He's like, yeah, people weren't able to like grab a certain weapon or something like that. So I took it to the hotel and I told him, I was like, dude, you were me like 5 years ago. Yeah, 100%, man. Okay. It had to be him. But many other dudes are probably doing that too. So
is and it's track it, like the way I seen it is like track her. Like was that by design or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so
is there like
there's
a story
lot
behind it?
Yeah, so there's kind of a lot of like play on words in the game because maybe it's the lyricist in me of writing lyrics, that I like to play with words or whatever. So the game is obviously spelled a dual hand disaster, but dual is spelled DUEL, right? And then tracker is track her. The idea there is you're tracking the ship on the right. She's the one that is the most vulnerable. If she dies, it's game over. If she dies, you lose everything and there's no coming back. The guy on the left, so it's a guy and a girl basically.
Okay.
And the left side is very aggressive, killing points, getting enemies, keeping them out of the right side. The right side is the one who's kind of more, I guess you could say more thoughtative, right? Like more like strategic, I guess, is, you're going here to grab this. You're going here to grab this. Should I grab these three or grab this one first? So it's more about getting to a certain point and then staying there while the other ship does other stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, the idea track her is obviously a play on the word. It's obviously tracker because you're trying to track it, but you're trying to track her because she's the most important thing in the game. So yeah, there's kind of a philosophical kind of idea to it all as well. But yeah, the funny part though is I didn't necessarily plan on that happening. It was all just kind of subconscious. But it goes to show that like, I wouldn't necessarily say archetypes, but it's the idea of like there are certain parts of the game that you can relate to real life, right?
Gotcha.
Like the idea again of getting out of your comfort zone, of the ability of getting somewhere to like focus on something else, but you still have this thing that you're focused on to try and finish. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of little things like that there's purpose to everything.
Yeah, I got you. Like no, I just I had noticed it. I'm like, I'm sure it has meaning. I know it's not a typo,
Yeah.
But I just kind of wanted to know. And it's single player, right? Just strictly single player?
Yep. So there was a point at one of the PAXs, and I think I started pretty early. It was like PAX 2017 or something, where... No, actually it was at EVO. I showed the game at EVO, and because EVO is like a fighting, like Street Fighter and all that kind of stuff. It's a fighting game competition kind of esports event. I thought, I was like, well, what if I had two people playing the game at the same time and just kind of have them compete against each other with score? Like, what would that do? And I just did it on the show floor one day. I was like, hey, man, I got two stations. You guys compete against each other, whatever. And it worked out really well, but the game isn't designed for that. So there are moments, for example, the extraction part of it. Someone can play like for 30 minutes and get 3 trillion points. Yeah. Someone can play it for 5 minutes and get 3 trillion points. Okay. Right? So that's kind of, there's a balance there that isn't optimized for when you're playing against other people. But also the idea of you having to extract also takes away a fail mechanic from the other player. So even though this particular game, ADHD, is a single player game, I did experiment with doing it two player, and at one point even was going to add in the code for multiplayer in the game. But again, one dude, like with minimal skills at coding, it was a route I didn't necessarily want to take.
I got you.
Maybe for the next one though. I never know.
That was another question.
Yeah, man.
Right. So the game's is done. Like it's
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because if you don't give yourself a moment of like this game is done, I mean the reason this game has been worked on for 10 years is just because it's like, fuck, I could still add this, I could still do this, like how one of your community people mentioned the idea of adding it as a patch, right?
Yeah.
Sure, it's very easy to go down the road of like, oh, I'll just add this as a patch, but one thing that I also want to move on from with this game is I've learned so much about programming over the years of working on this game that code base, like for anyone who knows how to program, if they saw my code base, they would just be like, what the hell are you doing? And how did you get this to run on anything, Again, granted, Unity does a lot of that for you, but yeah, a lot of my coding techniques or whatever, if you could even call them that, would probably scare the crap out of some engineers for sure. So that's kind of the idea. Is I've moved on from that. Like,
Okay.
yeah, I'd like to move on from that
No,
because I feel like
understand.
I could start up better.
Well, so you want to make more games in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Is like the games in the future that you see for yourself, like more 3D, kind of along the same path, like that's, not to get too far ahead, but like
Sure.
maybe share an idea or two of maybe what you have for yourself, like
Sure.
in the future.
Yeah, so actually I have already started on the next project. It's kind of a backstory to it that I don't want to talk about at the moment just because
Okay.
it's
whatever you feel like sharing,
yeah.
we don't pry
It's-
here.
No, sure, man. It's a little disappointing, but so the next game is is going to be made in Unreal Engine 3. I'm sorry,
Okay.
Unreal Engine 3, Unreal Engine 5.
Oh, okay. So you taking it back.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, no. So the next game's going to be made in Unreal Engine. I've already started it. I've already got a name for it, and I've already got the theme for it and the gameplay. What I don't have for it yet is a fully thought out design.
Okay.
But yeah, that's where I'll keep that there. But
Okay.
it is definitely the one thing I've always said about Askanenemy is that it will always make video games that are gameplay first, ask questions later.
Got you.
So it's always going to be, is this fun? Is it something that I could get friends to get in on? And is it look cool when shit explodes? Yeah, so that's definitely there has to be a dodge, there has to be explosions, and those are my two main things that
Okay.
they have to have. Yeah.
Dodge
And it has
and
to be
explosion.
fun, I guess
Okay.
is the third one. Yeah.
That'll
Fun,
work.
explosions. Yeah, totally.
That's how you make an Askanenemy game. There you go.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah.
Why Askanenemy? Like why that name?
Right. So Askanenemy is the idea of someone having the courage to talk to somebody that is thought of as an enemy. You know what I mean? Like if you have the ability to talk to somebody who most people would probably tell you, hey, like it's the idea of perception, right? Like if someone were to tell you, hey, don't talk to JC because he hates Metal Gear Solid, he's an idiot, and blah, 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 and you did not even bother to come talk to me as to why I thought that, that is the idea of Askanenemy. It's have the ability to like talk to somebody, whether you think they're an enemy or not, to get to understand them and understand their side of the equation, I guess,
Okay.
Only then can you make up your mind and be like, okay, yeah, no, that guy's an asshole.
Yeah, he's a real enemy.
Yeah, 100%.
You mean don't like Metal Gear Solid?
100%, man. Yeah, but that is the idea. It's the ability to just, talk to anybody, man.
Yeah. Okay. So, were you big on co-op or anything growing up?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the reasons why I didn't make a co-op game and kept it single player is, again, it goes back to the idea of scope, right? Because I didn't know what I was doing, and probably you could even say still don't know what I'm doing. But at the time, I knew that making a networked game would have been a nightmare because I barely even knew how to make a video game at all, right? So like having to make something that's networked, bad idea. Having to make something that's co-op on the same screen, that's a little easier to do, but there's still other stuff that you have to worry about because now you have to worry about someone else doing something at the same time you're doing something. But like, it's not like, ADHD kind of does that, right? Like you're doing two things, but you're completely in control. You don't need to worry about someone else hitting the pause button. You don't need to worry about what happens if this guy jumps into the lake, but you don't. It's just like, it's a very single lane focus. So that is one of the main reasons. But yeah, dude, there are a lot of co-op games that I liked growing up for sure.
I was just well, you kind of answered it anyway. So.
Sure, yeah. I mean, beat 'em ups, Double Dragon, just having a buddy there with you, playing the game. So I'll mention this. One of the reasons why the next game is an Unreal Engine 5 is because of its networking abilities.
Okay.
So
Hey.
yeah, just kind of keep that in mind.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the most I think I've ever told anyone about what the
I,
next game
I,
does, but
I ain't gonna tell nobody else.
it's all good, man. Yeah, don't tell anybody. It'll be our
Oh
secret.
no, you're right. You're right. So does ADHD have any like a story to it, like in game? Like when I play it, is it gonna like kind of give me a story like, hey, Mr. Blue, we're doing this because of ABC, or is it just kind of
No.
like instructions and it's like this is how you play?
Yeah, so man, I think what you're kind of alluding to there is the idea of like, does the game have a story?
Yeah.
Does it hold your hand kind of? Well, yeah, right. So in terms of a story, there is a video that is in the game. Like when you start the game, there's a little TV that plays a bunch of videos.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and those videos, there's a video called Prologue, The Last Transmission, and that is the most story that I put in the game. And the reason for that is I personally kind of goes with the ADHD-ness of it, is that I don't like games that, and this is weird coming from someone who fucking loves Metal Gear, I don't like games that have a story. Because I feel for the most part, it's just a complete waste and it's so dumb. And granted, Metal Gear is completely dumb, but it has a interesting story. Like Metal Gear Solid 3, more than anything, has the best story of them all. And honestly, it's one of the first games that made me tear up when the boss at the end. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. No, insane.
100%, man. 100%. So the other thing is, if you're going to tell a story, you better be a fucking good storyteller.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're wasting someone's time, that's not good because people are just going to skip it, because I know I sure as hell do. And yeah, a lot of people also get caught up in trying to tell a story to, you know, a lot of different reasons. And that's fine. It's good and dandy. If they want to do that, that's fine. Askanenemy will never do that. That is not something I ever see me doing as a, you know, cutscenes, stuff like that. More so because if I also just stay as myself, it's harder to make cutscenes and all that kind of stuff.
Understandable.
But yeah, so super long story short, there is a story in the game, just like a little 1 minute video that kind of just explains the basic premise of why the game is what it is. And the other thing about just throwing you into the game, that is kind of what the ADHD thing is all about. When I started making the game, I had a tutorial that would kind of hold your hand. So it would like show you one side of the screen in full screen, basically. And it would tell you, you know, kill these enemies. This is how you get a multiplier, blah, blah, blah. And then it would go to the other side and be like, this is how you get these resources, whatever. Okay, now it splits in half. And you're like, okay, now you have to do both of these things at once. A lot of people found that really slow, and it was just blocking up the ability for people to jump in and learn the game. Oddly enough, even though it's explaining the game to them.
Yeah.
So my second approach was, okay, just leave the game split in half, but then have, you know, text that pops up that kind of says, you know, you're shooting this enemy. This is kind of what's happens. This is over here. It's the same thing, but now it's just through text, and it would stop the game, right? So it was like, stop, okay, quit, stop, quit. And it was a lot of like, I don't know. I know you didn't get to play the game, but if you saw trailers of it, you would see how hectic it was. And to try and stop every single time to teach someone something was a pain in the ass.
Yeah, understandable.
Yeah. So my final decision was to just make little tutorial videos that will explain those things. And then based on the game just kind of throws you in. And when you die, whatever killed you, that video that shows at the game over screen will explain what killed you, why it happened, and what you can do to overcome it, right?
Okay.
And so again, that goes back to that philosophical thing of like, learn by doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, throw yourself in, try to figure this out. And if it's a complete mess, you know, and you die, like take your time, learn it, go back in, and just don't give up. Like the idea of not giving up, just keep jumping in and pay attention to what maybe killed you. Pay attention to what is happening over here more. Like take your time with it.
Right.
Or just jump in. And like I said, ADHD, it's like, what? And then you'd be surprised how many people learn from just like jumping in like that. That was the best approach of the three devils that I had to deal with.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah, man.
What's so since the game's been out, like what kind of reception have you gotten? Like, what are some of the like maybe like your favorites, or maybe someone else like, oh, I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, so one of the things was when I released the game on Nintendo Switch in 2019. Some outlet wrote a review, and the guy said, it's literally in the review. It's like, this game is not like Call of Duty. Like, I don't remember. It pissed me off so much that I'm like, what? Like, who even got this guy to review the game? Like, what kind of a comment is that to even make,
Right.
you know? So like when it comes to stuff like that, people are just going to be dumb, whatever.
Yeah.
But then you also have like the most important ones, I think, are like I said, when I go show the game at events and you see people's face melt when they see, holy shit, I have to do both of these things at once.
Yeah.
The coolest part is even when one person doubts they can do it, then they end up with the highest score of the day, which happens. It's patterns, man. It happens at every event. Then that person gets their friend to come play the game, and they're like, how did you do this? And that leads to a chain reaction of friends just wanting to best their friends, you know?
Right.
And it goes back to the idea of, you know, having that couch co-op thing, especially in a competitive setting, right? Where like you're playing against someone and you want to be better than them, or you know, stuff like that. That is the coolest thing ever to come out of making the game.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but sadly, I mean, now that the game's out, it's like it really is hard to get people to play a game that has already been out forever. So it's kind of up to situations like this, you know. Hopefully, someone who's watching or listening finds enough interest in the game to be like, oh shit, hey, I'll go buy the game, or get a free key.
Hey,
you know what I mean? Yeah.
I might have some keys somewhere.
No, I got you. Yeah. You know, stuff like that. Like that's my main hope. But for the most part, like, you know, I was able to start a community on Discord. So if anyone feels like joining, they can go to discord.gg/Askanenemy Studios. I hope you don't mind me, doing stuff like that. Yeah.
Well,
cool.
I also, when I post some clips to kind of build traction, I'll put it in there. You just have to DM it to me. So
sure, man. Yeah, absolutely, will do. Yeah, and it's just, you know, getting out there and watching a community get built on a game that you didn't even have an idea if you were even going to be able to pull off, you know. And that just comes over time, and it's through patience of just like sticking to it and yeah, just doing as much as you can to get the game out there as much as possible. But yeah, man.
No, that's because, you know, like hearing everybody's stories about how they started and where they are, or in your case, finishing. Because the other Joe wasn't finished at the time, but his game launched recently, and it's just like, you know, seeing or hearing more so, like just kind of like what you went through, because it seems like everybody's been self-taught. Like everybody just like, I want to put this game out. I have this idea. I'm gonna learn. So they go to YouTube University or something, you know.
Yeah.
And
and there are, I mean, dude, that's why I'm saying, that's why I love talking to people about this stuff. And again, why the in-person thing of going to events like PAX is so beneficial to me, because, well, I hope beneficial to the people who show up as well, because I spend a lot of time talking with people. And one of the main things I always hear is, how do I make a game, right? And it was like, I was in your situation as well. And the thing is, nowadays, it's so much easier because the engines are just available, right? Like, making the game is not the barrier to entry. It's more releasing the game, like finishing the game, right? Because a lot of people will just have little ideas and start working on them. A lot of people will like, their spark will die in the middle of doing that, you know, so they won't even finish. But the tools are there, you know, like the way to learn how to make video games, it's all there for you. You just need to have that motivation to want to do it.
Right.
And that is probably the hardest thing about everything, is your ability. I don't even know if it's an ability, but your want to do something, you know?
Yeah. It takes some real discipline to, you know, sit there and like,
and
I'm going to make this.
100%, man. And a lot of those people, like the ones, you know, like at DreamHack and stuff like that, like some of those people also are people who worked at bigger studios, and then they just you know, either they got laid off or they quit to do their own thing. So a lot of those people also have some kind of backing in the sense of, you know, whether it be clout, whether it be skill, that they can start something, you know, from scratch.
Right.
But some people like myself didn't have anything to do with the industry at all. I just kind of I brute forced myself into it, and, you know, everything kind of worked out as well as I could have hoped for anyway.
Yeah.
But and that's kind of what I'm trying to get to by saying that is, don't let that hold you back, because just because you have no reference whatsoever, that's not necessarily, like I said, the barrier to entry to make a video game, right? It's just your want to do it and your ability to approach it and you know, do what you can.
Right.
Tools are there, man.
Hey, man, that was very inspirational.
Hey, man, thanks. I mean, like I said, I like talking to people about this stuff, because the worst thing I hate is when people blame themselves for something that is out of their control, that they can't do something. You know what I mean? It's out of your control for a reason. Focus on the things that are in your control.
Right.
And approach those with every fucking ounce of your being, man.
Right.
And you'll accomplish some cool shit.
Right. See what happens when you ask an enemy.
Fuck yeah, man. 100%.
So, before we get out of here,
Sure.
You say you're a musician.
Mm-hmm.
How long, like, since, like, you were little? Were you just drawn to music? Was it, you know, dad put a guitar in my hand, that was it? Or mom?
Funny you say that. Honestly, so I started, I guess you could say I started being a musician when I was 15. I oddly enough saw my brother play with a couple of his friends. They weren't like a real band or anything. They were just kind of like, they were just a couple of friends hanging out, and they just got together, you know, his friend's garage, and they really didn't fucking finish playing a song or anything, but it was just the idea that I saw of like a couple of dudes just hanging out, playing music and having fun doing it, even if the music wasn't that great, or they were barely starting to learn. Like, I think at that time they were trying to learn a Nirvana song. And so like, no one really knew the song all the way through, but they were just having so much fun hanging out, trying to figure it out. Right.
Right.
And that itself was kind of like a really big part. But obviously, as with anyone else, you know, when you listen to music, you do kind of get into it. I don't know how many people who listen to music actually want to start a band. Maybe it's more nowadays. I don't know, because again, the tools in that sense are there for you as well. So anybody can make music. But for me, it was more the idea of just a couple of dudes getting together, trying to figure something out together that they don't fully understand.
Right.
And like a camaraderie in a way, right? And that's kind of what ignited it and pushed me forward. And the reason I pointed out the thing you said about my dad handing me a guitar, whatever. Funny part is my brother handed me his guitar when I turned 15 for my birthday. I remember waking up, like literally waking up, and my brother had his guitar to my head, like, because he's kind of aggressive and an asshole like that. But he put it to my head and he's like, "Here you go, man. Happy birthday." And I was like, "What?" Like, he gave me his guitar, you know, and I didn't know how to play anything. So like that day, like it was my birthday. My aunt took me to like a place here called White's Music Box. We bought a guitar book that shows you tablature and how to write music. And oddly enough, I'm not a big Nirvana fan, but it was the first Nirvana, Nevermind. The whole book was just all of those songs.
Okay.
And so I started learning how to play guitar by doing Nirvana, like probably a bunch of people did. But yeah, that's how I got my start. And then from there, it just started, like I started a band. I started a bunch of bands. My last band, my most recent kind of, it's also a one-man band. So I'm a one-man band. It's called Howard Rourke. Okay. And you can visit that on Instagram as well.
Okay.
Or even my website, thehowardrourke.com. Yeah.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, man.
You're first musician we had on the show.
Oh,
so it's
cool.
You know, I had to kind of, if I knew, I would have had better questions prepared.
Oh, it's all good, man. It's all good. Like I said, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk about that stuff too. But I mean, I know we're on a time constraint and stuff. But yeah, for sure.
So, like, okay, you know, as we kind of wind down, do you game often, like now?
Sure. Yeah.
What are you playing now? Like,
So I've actually been playing a lot, and I mean a lot, of Stellar Blade. Have you played Stellar Blade on PS5?
no, I it's on my. So I have a backlog, and I
Okay.
have a list of games to get. It's on the list of games to get.
Okay.
So I guess next time I catch it on sale and I remember,
Sure.
I'll get it.
Sure. I mean, so I'm a really big fan of those type of games. I was going to ask you like what it was you've been playing because like I like those type of action games. So like my favorite game before this was Nier Automata, and then before that it was Bayonetta. So you can kind of see the trend that I'm going down that route, right?
Strong women leads.
Yeah, fucking and over the top slash,
Yeah.
just fucking, chaos.
Yes.
Yeah, those games kind of lead that route, and that is the idea. I love those games. I love games that just have like female protagonists that are just fucking crazy cool with swords and shit. That's just awesome. So yeah, like I've been playing a lot of that game, and it's really, really good. It helps that they had a Nier Automata like skin pack.
Yeah.
So I just play the game now as that, and I just think of it as a new Nier Automata game.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, it's really, really good if you like those hack and slash kind of games.
Actually, the first game I bought with my own money with no
Sure.
help was Ninja Gaiden 2. I still have it.
Yes. Yeah, before
still-
before Bayonetta and all that, of course, Ninja Gaiden, yeah. The newer 3D versions of them, right?
Yeah.
How good are you at it? Like, did you finish it?
Oh yeah.
Okay,
I
cool.
beat all of
Fucking
them on normal. on normal.
Dude,
That's
I do
it.
not blame you, man, because on hard, like those games, talk about smash controllers, dude. That one, yes. Going back to your very first question of the rage thing, I forgot about that one. Yeah, Ninja Gaiden was definitely one of those snap the controller in half, man.
I remember it was Ninja Gaiden 1. It was the sister, or what's her name? Anna with the fiend.
Yes.
I could not beat her for like 3 days.
Oh man.
And what was worse was my dad had this habit of his thing was like, oh, you almost had her, but you died. It's like I think you're supposed to dodge. And it's like, I'm trying to dodge. Like, you see me actively trying to dodge. It's like, you should have blocked that one. It was like,
damn.
But
I'm like egging you on, right?
Yeah. But then he'll chill out and he'll be like, you'll get him next time. But
yeah. That's awesome, man. Fuck yeah.
But yeah, Ninja Gaiden 2 was the first one I bought with my own money. I still have it. Because I personally don't believe in throwing games away.
Sure.
Like, even if they're old and I'm not going to play them, I just try not to throw them away. I'd rather give them away, or sell them to a collector or something, than just throw them in the trash. It's just something that I do.
It's odd you say that, because I do know a lot of people who do that. Like that, once their old systems are done, they just throw them away. And I've always thought that was weird. I mean, in this closet, I've got like a PS1, a Dreamcast.
Dreamcast.
You know what I mean? Like a Nintendo, it's a Super Famicom, and it's just like a closet full of shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, and I had those growing up, but I kind of got rid of them when I was younger. And then over time you see them at like, pawn shops or whatever, right? And you pick them up. But yeah, dude, a lot of games do hold their weight, their value. Speaking of Ninja Gaiden, like going back to the old NES version of Ninja Gaiden, holy fuck.
Oh.
Like, yeah. Again, speaking of Smash controllers, man, seriously.
Those Super Nintendo, Sega games where it's like die from start of the level. Oh my god.
Yep.
Thank God for innovation.
Right, yeah. It's, like, just to go on that a little bit longer, is the idea of Stellar Blade is the idea of like all these people who are into like the Souls games, like Demon Souls, Dark Souls, and all that stuff, and that genre, I guess you could say it's a genre now, has gotten pretty popular. Yeah. And Stellar Blade, I think, does it right. It does that as well. It's the idea of like, when you die, you kind of respawn the enemies and all that kind of stuff. But you don't lose anything. Like, you don't lose souls, and you don't have to go grab them. You stay just as fucking badass as you were when you died. The only thing is you learn, fuck, I got to get my timing better. Like it does it right because it does it based on the gameplay, not on some bullshit like leveling thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you can't beat a boss, it has nothing to do with your level or whether you can beat him based on your level, and no matter how good you are, your numbers just aren't as good.
Yeah.
This is like straight up, you fucking didn't dodge at the right time.
Yeah,
Like,
okay.
you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's why I love it. In addition to everything else it does, that is fucking cool. But
Might
yeah.
have just bumped it up the list a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie.
Dude, I'm telling you, it's really good, and it pulls it off. Yeah,
Got
it
you.
pulls it off.
So, are you into anime as well?
Not as much as I was when I was younger.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah. Honestly, the funny thing is, the only thing I've seen in anime recently is the Crunchyroll. Like, I had a free subscription to Crunchyroll, and I heard Nier Automata had an anime of it, so I started watching that, and it is very fucking anime.
Yeah.
But it is very Nier Automata, and Nier Automata is very anime.
Yeah. That's why I asked, because you said like some the characters and the games you named were kind of like, yeah, I guess, like anime. When you think of games, they're like, oh, that could be seen like an anime character, anime game, kind of. So that's what made me ask.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I grew up on the stuff that, like, a lot of my friends watched them, but like Akira and what was it, Macross or something like that, like old school anime.
Yeah.
Cowboys of the Zodiac and stuff like that, like that kind of weird stuff. I haven't really watched anything new.
Okay.
If you recommend something, I'd be happy
I
to
have
check
to
it out.
see, but I can recommend. It's an older anime, Ninja Scroll. Everybody loves Ninja Scroll.
I've heard about that. Yeah, that was actually one of the ones they used to watch. I never got to watch it, so I'm not that familiar with it.
Yeah, it's
but yeah,
Ninja Scroll.
Sure.
But
Write it down.
As we wrap up, you have anything you want to share? You want the people to know, and plug yourself, whatever. As we wind down.
Sure. Dude, I mean, I appreciate this so much, man. Like, I tell you, I love doing this stuff. I'm glad that you're doing this. I wish you the best, man. Like,
Thank you.
If it's something that you want to do, like, continue pursuing it. Keep, talking to new people. Get as many people on the podcast as you can. Just learn from them and, listen to them, talk with them more than anything. Yeah, no, that's like super cool. Like I said, I appreciate it. For me, it's just like, hey, if you guys can visit AskanEnemyStudios.com or, buy the game or check out the game, tell your friends about it. I'll be doing some streams here and there on the Steam channel itself, just to kind of run people through the game and let them know how the game runs and stuff like that. Because that is the one thing that I've learned from showing the game at events is being there to explain the game to people. Some game designers might say that, oh man, you're not a good game designer if you have to explain the game to people. But I feel like the nicheness of ADHD requires that to a certain extent, right? Some people can just jump in and figure it out, but some people do need that little bit of a handhold.
For sure.
I wouldn't even call it a handhold, but
just a little push in the right direction.
Yes, like a motivation kind of thing. Because that is what I've seen at these events is, like I said, just being there talking to people is awesome. But yeah, man, like I wish you the absolute best with this. And I hope
you too in your future endeavors. And, if anything if as the team grows, us at Smash Controls can do to help, share, repost, get the word out, let us know. And
will do, man.
Don't let this be your last time on the show, JC. We don't have to just sit here and talk about, what you got going on. We can talk about if you're into wrestling. We can just sit here to have a conversation. This is just a nice, safe place for gamers and gamers alike.
Hell yeah, man. Always. Like, yeah, feel free to reach out whenever you want. I'm happy to be on here with you.
Will do. I appreciate you coming on. Everybody, thank you for joining us. You guys be blessed and prosperous, and we will catch you next time.